Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, feeling flat as a tack today, joined by Nick Sutherland with unexpected tradies at his house. Nico, how are you, mate?
I'm putting it out there. This is probably going to be the shittest episode we've done.
Maybe we'll call it that. Are you shuffling your fucking Uno cards there? What are you up to?
Really?
Can you pull a card for me? Can you pull it?
Yes,
Nick's
I'm going to pull
shuffling
a
his
card for
Nick's shuffling his spirit
the
guide
footer
cards.
cards.
Buddha,
The
which,
way that your
which,
brain
which
interprets shit.
archangel? Which archangel am I getting? Whatever's the funniest story to my brain, that's what I'll come out with.
Yeah, it couldn't be further from the truth in so many occasions. Tell me when to stop sliding.
For the benefit of the podcast, I'll say it sooner rather than later. Now,
Anytime you're ready, pal. Renunciation is what you
oh
need.
God, what do I need to renounce?
There's a great difference between the struggling in life and loving life. The practice of renunciation or voluntarily letting go will help you to end this struggle and make loving life possible. For when you are not struggling, you can give all you have to love, to dream, to be who you truly are, and to everything that you do wholeheartedly. And you're not giving any, you're not doing this wholeheartedly today, so you better start letting go of something.
Can you just read that first sentence? It was the first sentence.
There's a great difference between struggling in life and loving life.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm gonna
A
sit
lot of
with that.
people are holding on. Essentially, a lot of people are holding on to what they prefer, and like I'd prefer to have a morning where I didn't have three unexpected tradies turn up and have to go out there and start managing them before a podcast. And it's like 7:30 in the morning here, and it was just I'm like, right, I've got a full day of clients, and there's going to be rock breaking out there and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, if I hold on to a desire for none of that to be happening, it's going to use a lot of energy. I'll probably end up flat and bitter and twisted and resentful and
Like me.
yeah. So now I'm just letting go of everything, and it all just is, and it's all impermanent. It's all temporary. It'll all just be what it needs to be, and so be it.
All
So
right. All right. I'm feeling a little bit better already. With my personal little therapy session already. Um,
mm,
I've been struggling with something that I can't control the last couple of days. Um,
right.
a large technological company. And
You can't control it. How weird.
it's stupid, isn't it? I should be able to call the phone from down here in little old Australia to a large American
Mm,
tech company, and I should be able
mm.
to call the shots. That's what I believe. My ego
Yeah,
believes.
yeah, totally. Your ego's having a hell of a time. Viktor Frankl's work, we did the Master series, and he said,
Yeah, but I don't think Victor went through quite as tough a circumstances that I've been going through the last couple of days.
true, true. the, the Holocaust
With all due
and
respect,
and,
Mr.
and,
Frankel.
and, and technological issues.
Yeah. Me having a slight inconvenience with my business and the way that I track things technologically.
Mm.
No, look, I may be being a little bit. What am I catastrophizing? Would that be the cognitive distortion
Mm.
that I'm doing? I'm
Yes,
good at
yes,
that
you
one.
probably.
I'm very good at that one.
I know the way that your mind operates. It is. You have a powerful mind, and with great power comes great responsibility. So you have a responsibility to yourself first and foremost, your family secondly, and the rest of us thirdly, to make sure you monitor where your mind is and what it's getting up to.
Oh, mate, yeah, it's been a nearly a 4-decade challenge. That's why I can go to some pretty
Mm.
dark places, but it can go to some beautiful places and do
I
amazing
know.
things as well.
I've got the same thing going on. So that's why it's imperative that we do the work on a daily basis. So much of what we're doing is the first fundamental in Mindfit is prioritizing yourself, and that's turning up and doing the work. And we've been talking to a lot of clients lately about being an active participant in your own human experience. And a lot of people don't turn up. They don't intervene when they start to get upset or frustrated or whatever. They keep trying to. Michael Singer, I love you at the moment. You're trying to manipulate the world around you in order to
I'm exactly who he's talking about. That's a weird expression, though, isn't it? An active participant in our own human experience. Most people would just go, well, of course I'm an active participant. It's my human experience. So what exactly do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean by that? What's the distinction?
Mindful and mindless.
Right.
So how conscious and present are you? I'm listening to what I say as I'm saying it. I'm aware of my emotional sensations within myself. So when all these trades turn up at the same time and it starts all going all over the place, my natural instinct now is to go internally, and the dogs are barking because everyone's turning up. My natural instinct is to go internally and say, all right, I can't control what's going on out here. I can only control what's happening within me. And so how do I want to feel right now? Thank you, Paul. And that's where you've got to let go. That's where the Four Noble Truths. To live is to suffer. Things are going to go pear-shaped. Tech companies are going to be tech companies. Tradies are going to do their thing. It's all happening out of our control. So being an active participant in your own human experience is controlling the controllables. And the only thing that you can control is how you feel in relationship to things happening.
Yeah, it's like I'm here with Ryan, or you're there with Nick along the human experience. Because if I'm just Ryan, then I'm caught up in being just a weird human with all these automatic reactions and playing out patterns and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, okay, that's a good distinction.
Autopilot versus non-autopilot.
Manual pilot.
If you're in a manual pilot, yeah. If you're in an airplane and you're just on autopilot, you're sort of half asleep. You're not really conscious. You're not really having a cup of tea or reading a magazine or whatever, and things are just cruising along. But if you're there, you're able to respond to things as they happen, and you can move this way or move that way. So, thank you, Dale.
So I'm in a relationship with me feeling flat. I'm not just flat. I'm in a relationship with that. I have a choice. I have a way to respond to that.
There's been a source of stimulus which has triggered your attachments. So your ego has formed these desires for things to go a certain way. The three amigos, I must be loved and liked, must get what I want, and things must be perfect. So I'm not being loved and liked because they're not listening to me and doing what I'm asking of them. I'm not getting what I want, and I'm not living in utopia. So all three of those things, those beliefs have been activated, and now you're having an adult tantrum.
Okay. No, I'm not.
It's you can hear the ego in there, you can hear the rigidity in there, and you can hear how irrational it is. So that's where we teach a mental rep, and that's where, because none of us are immune to this, so we'll all fall into these traps occasionally. But then when we come into the awareness that we're falling into that trap, that we're feeling the way that we're feeling, and we can and that's where we can laugh at ourselves and go, how irrational am I being? I'm trying to control a massive company, and that is just hilarious. So
it is hilarious, isn't it? It's like we're okay with letting go of these attachments, the one that we're conscious and aware of, but then we don't know these other ones that we have until they surface because they feel like they come from left field. And it's like, well, let go of the attachments of how my partner shows up and what she does, and what my son's doing, and what the weather's doing, and all that kind of stuff. And then something happens that's just not even on the radar. It's like way in the back of the mind, the attachment. It's like they're just going, this over here is solid, and that's not going to change.
Very subtle. It's very subtle.
Yeah, but then it whacks you in the face.
It does.
Then not so subtle all of a sudden. Kicks me right in the dick. I got a sore dick. But I'm going to tend to that today.
Don't do it more on the podcast.
Is that a mental rep? What kind of rep's that?
It's a physical arm rep, I think. I told you it was going to be a shit podcast.
I know. I'm going to call it the shittest podcast ever. I'm just labeling it that already. What are we only fucking 15 minutes in?
So those, we'll just get running with that for a minute. So
Okay.
because you're not being an active participant in your own human experience, you're on autopilot. You're not really conscious of all of these things. You just react. And because those beliefs are in place, it's creating the distortion. So now you're looking at this global company through all these distorted lenses. You're blaming them, you're labeling them, you jump into conclusions, go in the worst case scenario, it's unfair, they should be doing this, you're probably disqualifying all the things that they've done well. All of those distortions are essentially in place. So you're no longer looking at the reality of what is. You're not in. What's the
I'm there's
psychological
part of
term?
me that wants to blame.
You're detached from reality.
I am. Yeah. Part of me
Okay.
wants to blame someone or something. And you can see it. I can
Yeah.
feel it. Part of it's sort of pointing because I spoke to them yesterday and they're saying everything looks fine on their end. I'm like, well, it's fucking not. Where's the disconnect here? And then I'm like, oh, if they're not to blame, then who else is to blame here? And that's the part that's trying to point the finger. And I always teach people that if I'm blaming, I'm stuck. I'm stuck as soon as I'm blaming someone or something.
So Google the definition of patience while we're sitting here.
Oh God! All right. Get on the old Google.
Sorry to make
Get on
work.
the old Google, mate.
Google.
All right. Okay. Here we go. Patience. The capacity to accept or tolerate, delay, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious. You can find, here's an example, you can find bargains if you have the patience to sift through the rubbish. A lot of rubbish going on.
So instead of focusing on this business, you got to go op shopping and sift through the rubbish and find. So you can hear this. So say it again. Say the first bit again. The capacity to tolerate or endure delay.
It's also what the British people call the card game solitaire.
Stay focused for a minute.
Sorry, that's very interesting. I'm off Google now. I'm off. I'm back.
I just said, can you read it out the first line again for people?
I just closed the window.
I know you are not an active participant in yours or my human experience today.
No, what made me think when I was a kid, because remember we got the computers back in the day, and like they'd have solitaire on them. But when I was taught it purely with the cards, I'm always meditating.
Like, do you train your mind just to stay present for longer than 5 seconds?
The capacity to accept or tolerate, delay, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed or anxious.
At the moment, so another word for patient would be equanimous. So equanimity is the ability to remain calm and composed, especially in a difficult situation. So you said at the start that you're feeling flat. Imagine how much energy it takes to have all this neurosis in your head.
Well, the energy, I think the energy's already happened. So now I'm flat because I've used up energy. Yes.
Well, that's what I mean. So you haven't been very fuel efficient over the last 3 days.
No, I haven't.
You've been leaking.
I've been using it up. I've been revving.
You have. Revving your engine. So yeah, so it's just not. It's how humans operate. That's what we do until we start realizing, you've given this company the key to your happiness and said whatever you do is going to determine how I feel. That's what happens when we're on autopilot.
Well, when they get their shit together, then I'll be okay.
Yeah, but you're outsourcing your happiness. So I'll be happy when X, Y, and Z happens.
Correct.
So patience isn't just waiting. Being patient isn't a passive activity. It's a very active activity, and it's what we do while we're waiting. It's how much are we surrendering to the reality of what is, how much we control the controllables. So you ask yourself, right, am I prepared to let go? It takes more strength to let go than it takes to hold on. Your nervous system is in a heightened state at the moment. You're in fight flight because
I'm in shutdown. I'm in shutdown right now.
Yeah, because your resources have been compromised. You're like, the grain in the silo has been threatened. You know, it's like my income. This is my income. This is my resources.
Yeah, it's a survival
go,
response. It's like, well, this is going to threaten my entire business when it's not.
No, that's your mind jumping to conclusions.
I'm letting that part of my mind speak.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, it's good. It's either going to be in here or out there.
Right. So essentially what we're saying is you have options. You can, there's choice. You can keep going down a destructive path and judging, criticizing, condemning, complaining, being stuck and problem oriented. Or you can take the hard path, which is the constructive path, which is you can have understanding, empathy, compassion, gratitude, solution oriented, and liberate yourself, liberate your mind.
What would you suggest? Which one?
Oh, look, I'm not here to live your life. It's, I think you've.
Tell me what to do.
It's up to you, mate. Do you want peace or do you want agitation?
I want a bit of both, I think.
Oh, it's your call. I want to fight, man.
I want the full human experience. I want it all. Yeah. Okay. Great.
It's a fun concept to play around with. Am I being an active participant in my own human experience?
Beautiful. So write that down, people. I'm writing it down. Write it down.
Right.
All right. Talk to us about David Beckham.
Becks, Golden Balls.
Is that really his nickname ever? Golden Balls?
Yeah, that's what Posh called him.
Right. Okay.
On a TV show when they were being interviewed. Yeah, so I was living in England 2000, 2001, 2002, which is sort of the when he sort of first came on the scene. So I've had an interest in Becks, and the Netflix series came out, the doco on him, and I just found it really interesting because it was he was the golden boy, the could do no wrong sort of guy, and it was. I think it was the first and second episode where they focused on this, and it was whenever things don't go according to how we want them to, big corporations don't solve our problems. It's very revealing, and it reveals our impurities, and it reveals, this is coming out from within me. And what it revealed was really gross from the nation of England. Shout out to all our English listeners. So yeah, and this is we talk about the depth of our suffering is in direct proportion to the depth of our attachment. So however frustrated you've been, if you've been frustrated 8 out of 10, you've had an attachment that's been 8 out of 10. It's that important to you. You care that much about it. It needs to happen. It must happen 8 out of 10. So the English football team, soccer to those outside of other countries, the Football World Cup, England are trying to qualify. David Beckham is playing, and he gets challenged by one of the Argentinian players. And there's already a lot of, there's England, Argentina aren't friends, so they're already in a sort of a heightened state. And David Beckham gets challenged by another player, goes to the ground, doesn't like it, lifts his leg, and the Argentinian player feels that touch and then flops and falls to the ground. And very typical soccer, unfortunately. And David Beckham gets a red card. So each team has 11 players now. England have to play the rest of the game with 10 players, all right? And they end up drawing the game, and then they go to penalties, and England lost the game on penalties, so didn't go to the World Cup. I think it was that. So anyway, talk about blame. The English press and the English people absolutely crucified David Beckham for getting a red card. Like he's a 23-year-old kid at this stage, right? 23. And all he did was lift his leg up, and the dude flopped, and even it wasn't worthy of a red card. But the dude shouldn't have flopped. It was just really interesting the way it all played out. People were hanging, like putting David Beckham jerseys on these dummies, and putting a noose around his neck, and putting it out in the street, like hanging
Wow.
these effigies of him. He was getting bullets in the mail, death threats. I think Victoria was just pregnant at the time as well, so he had that going on too. Yeah, and he's a 23-year-old kid, and and this it didn't just last. You know, they're interviewing all his teammates and friends and family, and they said, "Yeah, we thought it'd died down after a week or two." It went for 6 or 7 months, just relentless. You should die. Like the whole country, the whole press was just, and yeah, sitting there watching it objectively, I was just heartbroken for humanity. Like it was so revealing what humans do. It was it's a game, but they all go, it's more than a game. It's football is life and everything. But they're so deeply invested, emotionally invested and attached to these outcomes. And when it didn't go their way, the whole country got triggered, and yeah, it was gross. It was so sad to watch.
Oh, yeah, I'm just trying to imagine that feeling as well, being a 23-year-old kid where, your whole country is kind of represented. It's enough people that it feels like the whole world. It's like, well, everyone fucking hates me. Like
And he grew
people.
up
Mhm.
he grew up wanting to play for England. Like it was so important. He wanted to play for Manchester United, and when he finally got to play for England, it was everything to him.
Boyhood
And
dream.
then and then this one little incident just absolutely triggered this chain reaction of horrific events.
Yeah. Do you think as well, it's like, already what you've explained that, everyone's so fucking invested in sport. It's crazy. And also he's, this young, good looking, handsome kid and all that kind of stuff. And, I feel like in Australia, for those who aren't listening from Australia, we have this thing called tall poppy syndrome, where it's like as soon as we want people to do well, but we don't want them to do too well. And as soon as they start doing really well, we want to pull them back down. We want to humble them and all that, which is just so gross. The exact same response as what's happened in England. It's just so gross. And, I think it just kind of comes from this deep-seated thing. Like, I wish I was that person and I had the guts and the skill and the hard work to back myself, to put myself in that position, but I never will. I'm just going to be this person who sits around working 40 hours a week, drinking on the weekends, talking shit about my missus. And so when that person does something which in the scheme of everything sounds so innocuous. I didn't see it. I'm not a soccer fan, but it's like so innocuous to then go, yeah, I feel pretty warranted in burning effigies of this kid in the streets is wild. It's just such strange behavior.
I sat there in awe and not disbelief. I just sat there in I don't know, a bit of shock, and I was stunned. I think I was just like, because it took me back. I remember being in the country when it all happened, and I remember, I was working in pubs, so we played the game in the pub, in a sports bar, and had all the geezers in the bar drinking, and it took me back to then. The papers it was relentless on this dude, and so this is what 20 years after the fact. And but what sets David Beckham apart, I think, from a lot of other people is he went through that and he didn't react. Everything that was coming at him, he didn't react. He didn't lash out. He didn't abuse anyone. He didn't justify the event. He just moved through it really stoically, I suppose. And he did it in a way that worked for him, and he did it with his head held high and really honourably, I think. But I wish he had have spoken about it to a therapist or something. I wish he had have gotten some help at the time for it. He just held it all in, and even that didn't. Usually when someone holds it in, it compounds things and it creates toxicity within them, and then it comes out later. But it didn't for him. And what was really interesting, so the next season, so he had to, when so it was one game for England. When they went back to the regular season, he was playing for Manchester United, he'd have to get escorted by armed guards into the opposing team's grounds because
Wow.
everyone was trying to get to him. And that went, as I said, 6-7 months, the whole season. So the next season, he comes out and Manchester United win the league title. They win the FA Cup title, which is all of the clubs in England play in that. And then he won the European title, which is unprecedented. No teams ever won all three in the one season. And you go from your worst sort of year ever to your best year ever. And that's, he got interviewed by a journalist, and he said, "How did you do that?" And he said, "Well, it was just an opportunity to grow." He said it was, I was a bit silly by lifting my leg, and after he kicked me, but he held no resentment towards anyone. He held no anger or bitterness or anything. He controlled the controllables. He went internal and goes, "What can I do? I can train better. I can learn from this. This is an experience which I can become better for having been through." And I just sat there and just couldn't. I already admired him for what he's done in sport and life and everything. I don't know if he had an affair. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. But he. Just the way he carried himself through that and bounced back from that adversity, I think that it was just such a really valuable lesson for a lot of people. But there's also a valuable lesson in looking at the fans and the press and everything as well.
Yeah. I think, from hearing, similar situations with sportsmen and other people, it's like the only way you get through something like that is really having a good grounding of knowing who you are as a human being, like having some sort of North Star or anchor. And then, surrounding yourself, like your inner circle, with the people who love you and know you, because it's like wherever you put your attention, that's going to expand. And, just sit down and, start reading newspaper articles and watching the news and then not really have a good grounding in who you are and not having great people around you, fucking good luck with that. I can only imagine, sometimes you'll have, people listening might be able to relate, and you might, have 3 or 4 encounters over a few day period, and then that go negatively, and you're like, fuck, you feel like the whole world's against you, and there's that feeling. Whereas this kid who was 23, it's like, magnify that times, a million, and kind of that's what's going on. And, if we don't have that really good grounding in who we are, I guess that's a testament to him. And also, I guess I don't know much of his story, but a testament to his upbringing as well. To have a grounding.
His parents were very involved in the documentary, but it was a testament to the Manchester United Football Club and Sir Alex Ferguson, who was the manager. So, Alex Ferguson brought David Beckham into the club at the age of 15, saw how talented he was, and his dad was a diehard Man United fan. So it was sort of, it was a fairy tale journey for the Beckhams as a family. But after that incident, what Alex Ferguson had created was not a team, but a family. And so his best mate was Gary Neville. He played on the right side of the field with him. All of the other players, just as you said, and it was really well put, they just got around him and they just created this wall around him, and they just created this protection around him. Other players on the field, from other teams, were just smashing into him all season, just coming in and cutting his legs out from under him, and then bang, 2, 3, 4 Man United players would turn up to defend him. And so it was so interesting. The English coach at the time threw him under the bus as well. Everyone said, this is interesting. Everyone said we lost because Beckham got a red card, and he was the absolute scapegoat for that. They completely dismissed that no other player scored, and then they drew the game and went to penalties. So you've got first to 5 penalties. They absolutely dismissed the fact that a couple of their superstars missed penalties in the penalty shootout they still had the chance to win.
Yeah.
So yes, David Beckham coming off affected the dynamics and had a ripple effect, but he was not the reason they lost.
Oh yeah,
And
that always I find that so fascinating. Like obviously watching a AFL footy game, and something like there's only a couple of points in, and then something happens near the end, like someone
the
gets
grand
tackled when they
final
were
last
streaming
year,
forward. Yeah, anything like that. And it's like, oh, they've lost the game. It's like there were like 120 other minutes and opportunities for things to happen. It's like you just focus on that tiny one bit and all the blame goes there.
yeah, the blame went on the AFL umpire in last year's AFL grand final because there was he paid advantage on a free kick that none of the players heard. And so the ball got turned over and went down the other, and then Collingwood won the game. But they didn't realise that a couple of the opposition players had missed goals. Two Brisbane players missed pretty easy goals. And one Brisbane player gave away a 50-metre free kick, which resulted in a Collingwood goal. So there's 3 incidences in the last quarter alone where Brisbane had an opportunity and didn't take it. So, yeah, it's funny. We just get fixated on this one thing, and that's the reason. That's the only reason why this happens.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I never was a soccer fan or anything, and but those kind of stories really interest me. And yeah, he just must have had such a good grounding and people around. Like you said, that family environment. Like if you feel like the world's against you, but you can step into an environment like a bubble where you're like, hey, these people here all love me. I'm going and training with them. I know they love me. I've got the father figure who's the coach and everything. Then you can be shielded from it. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people will get into trouble if something on any scale like that happens, but then they can't help the desire to go online and read about what people are writing about them, or that it's very hard
You've
not
got
to.
you've got to be so disciplined. That's being an
Yeah,
active participant in your own human experience. David Beckham had to turn up and employ his emotional intelligence. David Beckham's been called, at the start of it, he was softly spoken. He had a bit of most people were seen as, a pretty boy, not too bright, all of that. Scientists have called him a genius because of the way that he could manipulate the ball to score the ball. The way he could, they'll bend it like Beckham. The way that he could, and I said subconsciously, he's calculating humidity and trajectory, and it's like a mathematical genius, but deep down. And from what I saw, his emotional intelligence was very high. The way that he turned up for himself and self-managed and employed self-discipline, and didn't read the papers, didn't he just. I just think it's an amazing example of how to move through adversity well.
yeah, yeah. The only thing that I've seen of Beckham lately was a couple of weeks ago. I don't know why, it must have popped up on Instagram, but there was a clip of I think Posh in an interview, and she's saying like, yeah, both of us, we came up from nothing, and then David Beckham pops his head in the door and goes, "What car did you get driven to school in?" She's like, no. What car did you get driven to school? She goes, "Well, it's a Cadillac," or whatever it was.
No, it was a
Rolls Royce. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, they're funny. They're a funny couple, but they're just even when he finished his career, like he took these leaps of faith and went and played for LA Galaxy, which was a nothing league, and he went there and he was just a prolific winner, but he knew he was retiring, and instead of just sort of relaxing and everything, he knew himself. He knew what sort of person he was. He knew he needed something to focus on. So that's where he started his own football team in the American League, and built the Miami team, which has signed Lionel Messi and gone on to do amazing things. So he's kept himself engaged and occupied and found this balance after, and a lot of the ex-players that they interview talk about how every soccer player or every athlete is just a junkie. They just want the adrenaline. It's the crowd roaring. It's that's just, they get so conditioned to that chemical experience week after week that when they retire,
There's a void.
they really struggle.
Oh yeah, any of those of high level sportsmen like alcohol, drugs, depression, anxiety. It's just there's a big void there. It leads me on if I can just switch to another sportsman
Go for it.
and their mental health. Was watching the UFC on the weekend, and Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champ, who's Australian, took a fight on 12 days' notice to move up a weight division and fight in Abu Dhabi. And Volk's this guy who us Aussies have always loved, who follow the sport. The last couple of years, everywhere around the whole world have kind of fallen in love with him. He's just like, he's obviously fucking amazing at what he does. His attitude is like unreal. He seems to be always having fun. He's so active. He's fighting all the fucking time. Anyway, takes this crazy fight on 12 days' notice, goes to Abu Dhabi and gets head kicked and stopped in the first round. And it was really interesting because like they interviewed him in the cage, and the first thing he says, "Yep, got me with a great head kick." And then he was meant to fight in January to defend his featherweight title, and then he's like, "Yep, book it." You know, he's just been head kicked. He's got massive cut all over his face. He goes, "Just keep me busy," like Dana, the boss, just keep me busy. And I'm like, it's a strange thing to say. And so anyway, I went then Sunday and played golf, and then came home and I watched the post-fight press conferences normally, depending on who's been fighting. And yeah, he did the press conference and he started like choking up and tearing up, and not at the fact that he lost, but he fought back in February in a massive fight. I think he fought June or July in a massive fight, and now he's fought again. And he goes, a lot of people will say I was doing this for the money because he would have got a great paycheck. He saved the whole card. And but he goes, to be honest, with when I'm not fighting and in camp, I do my own head in. And he started like choking up. And he's like, I don't know why. I got a beautiful family at home. He's got a newborn kid. And he goes, I just need to stay busy and get in another fight camp. And, you know, it was really humbling to see him actually kind of break down and everything. And it was shocking because he's this like, you know, person that you put up on a pedestal, but it's this classic athlete thing where, and the first thing I think of, I'm like, man, he's 35. He hasn't got many years left. It's like, what happens when it's over?
Codependency.
There's no, and you know, it makes me think of and he's definitely not at this stage yet, but there's so many fighters who, you know, they'll retire, come back, and end up just getting, you know, taking very unnecessary brain damage, really. You know, my greatest idol of all time, Muhammad Ali, is one of those, you know, a great example of that. But it's like, yeah, it's just crazy. And I mean, he was choking up saying he didn't say the word mental health or mental illness, but it's 100% what he was talking about. He's like, I never thought I'd struggle with it. I didn't really believe in it. But when he had those idle hands, you know, there it was.
They do the devil's work.
Yeah. So I hope he's okay, and I hope that he can work through that out, and then like you're talking about with Beckham, is to then go, okay, I've got this life after fighting, and this is what I'm going to put that same discipline towards, just in a different field.
Yeah, but that's, remember that episode we did of Know Thyself. That's where you know, knowing yourself intimately, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your nature, and you know, turning up for yourself every day and finding that balance. I know that you know, my tendency is if I start getting bored, you know, the old Viktor Frankl, he who doesn't have a purpose in life will distract himself with pleasure. So I know that I'll, you know, start eating more or watching more Netflix or getting on my phone a bit more or having a few extra beers or whatever. And as soon as I notice that, I'll go, oh, right, well, I'm distracting myself with pleasure at the moment. Why is that? Why am I channeling? All right, I'm feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated, but I don't need pleasure. What I need is rest, or I need to go and do something else. So it's, yeah, good on him for being vulnerable, and revealing, you know, his soft spot, his underbelly.
Yeah, and that's what made it so powerful to me. And I've seen, you know, a lot of people now, you know, in the online commenting about it and all that and supporting. But it's just, you can see for those guys that haven't understood it before, and you can tell have been kind of keeping it in, to sort of see it like bleed out like that. It's like heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. It's like what you were saying, how you were kind of in awe of English, the reaction, even as harsh as it was. It's like kind of like, wow, that's, you know, what humans can do. And I think it's just, yeah, that's why it was so touching to see someone who everyone's like, oh, he's just having a great time with life. Look at him go. He's, you know, got millions in the bank.
And,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I've worked at one of the most prestigious resorts in the world as a visiting consultant in Thailand, and the people that would visit such a place, they pull up in their yachts in the bay, and in their super yachts in the bay, or get helicoptered in, or money is not an issue for any of them, and they come in and they're all happy and glowing and tanned and wearing white linen and having cocktails and all that sort of stuff. And then they notice that, oh, there's a guy I can talk to here. There's all these visiting. So there's a Tai Chi instructor, and there's a yoga instructor, and then there's this dude doing mental health stuff. And a few of them, courageously came and knocked on my door and came and had a few sessions and whatnot. And it was so interesting, they're so used to people bowing around them. There are lots of Russians and Americans and British and all sorts of different nationalities, but they're so used to people saying yes to them or cowering away from them because they're so powerful and ever. And they turn up, and I'm just straight into it. I'm just like, let's lift the bonnet and see what's going on under here. I'm like, well, that's a fucking mess. That's a mess. That's all over the shop, and really sort of obviously not that harsh and that way. Built a lot of rapport with them first, but as soon as you lift the bonnet with these people, you notice that they're masking so much with money, and they're masking so much of their deficiencies, or there's so much insecurity. They're just lost. A lot of them are lost, and not all of them. It's not a generalization, but we're all human, and we all have these human emotions, and none of us are immune to our mental health being affected because we don't know how to look after it. My own experiences, I hit that rock bottom, but without that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Beckham wouldn't have been where he is now without that adversity. But so that's that. We can't pray for an easy life. We're going to develop the capacity to endure a difficult one, and that's done by learning how to be patient. That's by learning when we're forming attachments and these desired outcomes and craving for things to be different to how they are, and then in that moment going, actually, what can I control? I can't control that. I can just reassure myself. So the version of Ryan that's existed the last 3 days, there was an opportunity for him. He did the best he could, but there was an opportunity for him to self-soothe and go, actually, everything's okay. I'm okay. The business is okay. We're all okay. And it's not ideal. It's a little bit frustrating. It is whatever it is. It's inconvenient and all of these things, but it's not the end of the world. We're okay. Food, water, shelter, family. I have an abundance, but we slip into that sense of deficiency. I won't have enough, or I don't have enough, or not enough's being done. There's that not enoughness really starts coursing through us.
Yeah. I don't think it doesn't matter what we have or anything. We will normalize whatever we have, and then that becomes a baseline. And then whenever that baseline gets challenged, we freak out. When it's just perspective. If I think back to when I was a drug addict, and then I'm like, oh, in X amount of years you'll have this problem, I'll be like, right, that will be so good to have that type of problem instead of the ones I'm dealing with now. But that like normalization is so interesting to me, the way that we can fairly quickly normalize our experience, and then
take it all for granted.
Wish for more, take it for granted. Yeah. 100%.
And it's not. It quickly becomes not enough. Because we adapt to it. It becomes part of the norm, and because nothing's different or new or shiny, we're like, or it's not growing. We look at it as, oh, well, that's we've got a perfectly good TV, but I need a new TV. It's
haven't you seen the new one that's they've made? Haven't you seen the new one that's come out?
We a TV. I ordered a TV online on online appliances about a month ago, and it turned up yesterday. And so we haven't had a TV. We watch Netflix on our laptop or whatever, and we hooked this TV up last night. It's not hooked into commercial TV or anything. It's just a streaming platform, and yeah, we sat there watching it, and we both sort of looked at each other. And we're sitting on a couch and we're watching TV. Wow! So this is so fancy.
So
Look
this
at
is how the
us.
other half live. Ooh.
And I can't help but look at the spectrum of abundance, and there's the multi billionaires up that end, and then there's the third, fourth world countries down that end, and everything in between, and you know, I wouldn't say I'm middle of the spectrum, but I'm probably more close to that end. But in terms of everything, but it's having gone from lived in suburbia and comfort and having it all there, all the conveniences there, to being here, it has been really interesting to observe my own responses to things. And yeah, I never watched TV anyway, back at home, but we had a TV. And then to get a TV and just to go, oh, look at us, it's like, it's so silly. Like,
Yeah.
it's
It's like if you
ridiculous.
go, you might, Aussies oftentimes go to Bali and whatnot, for their holidays because it's close by, and your money goes a fair way just because of the exchange rate and
Mm.
everything. And so they might stay in a, really fancy resort, and there's a really fancy room, and it's much more fancy than their house back in suburbia in Melbourne or wherever it is. And like you're like, oh, look at this, look at the couch here and the blah, blah, blah. And it's all this, like a little excited kid. But then it would not take long at all if that was your living situation for you to be bored as fuck with it and look for the next thing. It is. And it's
Yep.
hilarious. It's so
So
funny.
that's where contentedness is happiness. It's not having things. What was it? George Carlin was talking about. Trying to. Oh, hang on, I'll get the actual quote. Because it's as I said, we all do it. Everyone got this in them. Trying to be happy by accumulating possessions is like trying to satisfy hunger by taping sandwiches all over your body. It's all
It's
external.
classic. It's like that's the cycle of addiction. It's like the ancient fable of the hungry ghosts who are just trying to stuff their mouth, but like they're ghosts and just kind of fall through and they're always hungry. It's like a hunger that can never truly be satiated. We can never be filled. We can achieve temporary states of pleasure, but it's not fulfilling.
Mm. And that's the thing, is that people think that sense of deficiency creates a void, and they keep trying to fill that void to make them happy. But it can't be filled with external things. It needs to be filled with a sense of gratitude. And you don't have to sit there and bow down to your TV. Everyone, I'm so grateful for having this TV, and the fact that this TV exists in my lounge room. It's a wonderful TV. Don't go to those extremes, but it's like, you can have a daily practice, if you will, of just going. I'm grateful for what I do have. I don't need more of this. A 10,000 watch does the same thing as $100 watch, and so it's five. People who spend 20, 30 grand on a couch. And it's like, oh, it's so interesting. We're so weird.
Well, that's why the journey of just understanding who we are, like, obviously David Beckham was through that time in the early 2000s, and being able to have a good grounding of that, be grateful for just who we are as a human. We're all unique. We're all very different. That doesn't mean we're right or wrong or good or bad. But,
No,
when I'm okay and grateful for me and who I am, then what I have, you know, doesn't mean we renounce everything. It just means that it's not a determinant on my worth as a human being.
yeah, we don't need to rely on it to determine who we are, but we don't need to live in a cave as hermits either. You can if you want, but
And
it
if
was
you
interesting
want.
with Beckham as well. He does a lot of cooking and cleaning at home, and he hasn't outsourced that. And I think that's a very grounding thing as well. A lot of people that have the means will outsource all of their menial chores, but those menial chores are really important. They keep us grounded. They keep us connected. And yeah, without them, because they're very meditative activities as well. They sort of feed the soul. Cooking for your family feeds the soul. But employ a chef or just buy ready-made meals all the time, you're not being an active participant. You're not involved in the creation of your own meals. So it couldn't be any further from the spectrum of, hunter-gatherer to now, can you hunt and gather for me? And it's just, yeah, it's not healthy, I don't think.
It's making me hungry though.
Yeah, I could go an omelette.
Oh, an omelette. What kind of omelette do you go for? Mushrooms, bit of cheese in there.
Yeah, spinach, but I like the Meredith's goat's cheese,
Ooh.
bit of Spanish onion, a bit
Oh,
of
God.
jamon
Oh,
or some
come
bacon.
on.
Jamon, yeah. I can really go an omelette now. But yeah, so there's something floating around in my brain that I wanted to pull out, but I can't quite grasp it at the moment. In relation to the Beckham things, as I think we touched on his EQ. Yeah, no, it's not there.
Is EQ what?
Well, his EQ. We've touched on his EQ and his capacity to self-manage and self-regulate.
And EQ is everything. EQ is like our quality of life is determined by this emotional state that we're in at the time, essentially, and our relationship to that. So it's like completely.
You could have life happens to all of us to various degrees, but if you're not there to manage yourself and your emotional state in that moment, then you're just going to be constantly affected by everything around you, and it doesn't need to be that way. There's another path you can take.
The hard path to happiness.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's an original thing I just said. Never been said before. I'm gonna call my book that. Imagine that if I wrote a book first and call it that. It's like a rushed and shit book, but I just wanted to get in ahead of you, so you couldn't call it that.
I'd love it. That'd be the best thing ever.
I can't be bothered.
I can't remember what was the subtitle to that. It was
What, you had a subtitle organised?
yeah.
How are you looking it up?
It's in my notes on my phone.
Oh, it's in the notes.
Stuff like that. The art of suffering and the pursuit of unhappiness.
Oh, I love it.
Because that's what we're doing. Our normal ways. We love suffering and we pursue a lot of unhappiness. We there's a lot of outsourcing. So yeah, it's great to have something that we can put out there for people to come in contact with, and just we're not telling people what to do or telling them how to live their lives or that this way is better than any other way. Everyone's doing the absolute best they can, but there's none of us are perfect. None of us know everything or can do everything. So there's always something that we can do to improve our quality of life, I think, and that's for me that's the main priority. Is when I'm okay and I'm laughing and I'm light and I'm happy and I'm free, then that's a wonderful experience. But then people around me get to experience that as well.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to achieve with the podcast, just to make you feel better. I mean, make the listeners all, feel a little bit better. Maybe they can look at something a little bit differently today. Although this has been a pretty shit podcast from my point of view. Like, I haven't been great today.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to call it that. I'm calling it the shittest podcast.
Good, I hope so. I guess the takeaway is adversity happens to all of us. We
and
we all
thank
fall
God.
down, but what's happening in your life or happening in your life at the moment which is really challenging or not ideal or inconvenient or embarrassing or whatever word you want to use to describe it. But how are you becoming better for it? How are you handling yourself and controlling the controllables? How are you? Are you? It's going to reveal stuff. It's revealing that Ryan's an impatient bastard. What's it revealing within you when
Bit of a
things don't go your
label.
way?
Well, there's a little bit of a label there.
Yeah, it's fun though.
All right, let's wrap it up. I'm hungry. I need to go have one of my microwave meals.
I'm going to try and make an omelette in my kitchen around all these tradespeople.
All right, peace out, everyone.
They are.